Hi, my friends from all over the world. My name is Yaxi, and I am a PhD student from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Today, I would like to share a part of my research with you. It is about referencing other people's artworks in children's picture book illustrations, which is called Interpictoriality. The idea of words or artworks referring to other words or artworks has been adopted by artists and scholars for centuries, like this painting here. From the painting we can see that many masterpieces are reproduced in this picture. It is like wandering in the art world. This idea associates me with a reflection on representing all kinds of arts and artworks in picture book illustrations. Why would illustrators reference other people's artworks in their picture books? Are there different ways to represent them? What would illustrators like to say in their artistic appropriations to their readers? To find answers to my questions, I have designed a research underpinned by the interpretivism paradigm. My research can be generally divided into three parts: literature reviews, interviews to illustrators, and picture book analysis. The part of literature review further includes three different sections. The first section looks for different ways of artistic appropriations in picture books. All picture book components, such as illustration, text, book cover, and other parts, are all examined to find their connections, which refer to interpictorial designs. The second section is about picture book scholars' interpretations of interpictoriality in children's picture books. In their researches, many scholars have been trying to define this concept and dividing it into diverse forms. The third section refers to children responding on interpictorial images in children's picture books. In this section, researches about children's developmental account of aesthetic experience on visual arts are involved to reflect on children reading interpictorial images in illustrations. The second part is about picture book illustrators explaining their understandings of the concept and their observations and expectations on children reading interpictoriality in picture books. In this part, I prepared a list of semi-structured questions and interviewed 6 illustrators from both East and West to investigate their perspectives of interpictoriality. While discussing the interviews, I also involved the previous study on children's aesthetic experience on visual arts from Part 1 to support the analysis. The last part is about picture book analysis. In this part, I aim to testify the theories from both scholars and illustrators in some relevant picture books that I select. I even try to locate any further points that illustrators or scholars didn't cover to complete my results. All the involved studies shall aim to answer the research questions that I asked. The link of this diagram with a greater value is attached in below. Please have a check if you are interested. Picture book scholars have been exploring the illustrator's interaction with fine arts in picture book illustrations and use different terms to identify this concept, such as intertextuality, artistic allusion, and appropriation of fine art. In 2019, Hoster Cabo and her colleagues proposed the term Interpictoriality to refer to the connections between pictorial texts, and intertextuality to refer to the connections between images and texts in picture books. In my research, I am studying picture books from their visual perspectives. For this reason, I tend to explore the text as visual elements as well. Although the previous studies have introduced many terms to identify this concept, the term interpictoriality might be the most up-to-date one which fits my research well. Some of the scholars have also been trying to analyze different categories of interpictorial images in picture books. Frank Serafini has divided these images into 3 different categories. In his theory, he observes that appropriating an original artwork as an interpictorial reference is categorized as reproduction. It suggests an illustration with a faithful rendering of original artwork. Instead of quoting an entire artwork, sometimes illustrators either partially refer to the artworks or transform them to fit their work's visual style, context, or other narrative purposes. He defines this kind of interpictoriality as transfiguration and suggests there are 2 types in general. The first one is coming to life. We can see in this illustration the artist changes the position and the gesture of the character from the painting and let her participants in the picture book story. The second one is parodic transformation. In the illustration, the artist chooses the character Mona Lisa from the painting, modifies her look, and depicts her transformed image into the illustration. In the illustration, the identity of the character has been changed. The character in the picture book no longer represents Mona Lisa, but another figure with a similar looking instead. However, all Serafini mentions in his research is about characters. So what about other kinds of artworks? For example, what about those landscape, still life, or abstract artworks? When I turn to search for answers in my picture book analysis, I also find some other picture books beyond his scope. Sandra Beckett suggests that illustrators who have open minds sometimes reference more than just one piece of artwork and extend their appropriations to an entire collection of works. He defines this kind of interpictoriality as scavenging of styles, which refers to those illustrations inspired by and intended to parody a particular collection of art. Serafini's concept of stylization is very similar to Beckett's scavenging of styles, but with a broader scope. For Serafini, those allusions are not only inspired by an art movement or the school of art, but can also be influenced by a particular artist's work collections. What Serafini didn't mention, but Beckett did, is that some illustrators cleverly blend 2 or more arts in the same book, or, as I observed, even in one single illustration. This picture book is from one of my illustrator participants in my research. In our conversation, she said that she has involved diverse arts in this picture book. The allusions of paintings and sculptures from both Western and Eastern arts can all be found in her works here. In this displayed illustration from her picture book, the image of the wave that she referenced is from Japanese traditional ukiyo-e. The female character is from Chinese Dunhuang frescoes from over 1,000 years ago, and those light waves are from the representative Oriental brush pen painting skills. Well, the extension of interpictoriality continues. Besides referencing other people's artworks, some illustrators seem to love including their own previous works and images of themselves in their works. In this presentation, I would like to introduce a bit more about referencing the images of illustrators themselves. Except for showing illustrators' humor or irony, this kind of interpictoriality involves breaking the communicative boundary between the illustrator and the readers in a picture book. Think about it. Illustrators usually do not communicate with readers directly, aren't they? So, this sort of self-referentiality from illustrators is like breaking the fourth wall in a film or a performance. Referencing themselves in a picture book sometimes provides them a chance to break the narrative dimension and even communicate with the readers outside of the narrative dimension directly. More than one illustrator participants in my research have talked about this artistic activity from illustrators. They believe that no one can see apart themselves from their own works. In some perspectives, you're always in your stories. Your works are always about you eventually, because the illustrations are the creations from your thinking, your feeling, and your experience. Those illustrators here have realized it and made it more clear in their works. Besides the previous studies, I have found the extension of interpictorial categories in some other picture books too. In this slide, we can see that although some images may not be considered as actual artworks, they might be the images of some well-known people, a logo of a brand, or simply an image from a theme. What I want to say here is the boundaries between fine arts, especially those contemporary arts, and other visual productions are blurring nowadays. We couldn't deny that the displayed images can also function as artworks too in some perspectives. They can also provide some literal and connotative meanings in an illustration to evoke readers' curiosity to look for symbolic or cultural meanings in picture books. What's more, visual art might not be the only inspiration which appeals to illustrators' attention. Like the displayed illustrations here, they are all inspired by, if you can tell, the works of literatures. This suggests that other forms of art may also provide us with some brilliant ideas for our picture book creations. Moreover, I found that except for illustrations, interpictorial designs can also emerge in other components in a picture book. This picture book contains several pages in the form of accordion. It seems that the illustrator attempts to emulate the Chinese ancient bookbinding style of orihong. The illustrator's imitation of the ancient book form provides a frame which to convey a sense of interpictorial atmosphere of Chinese arts. Besides, the texts on the illustration page are arranged vertically. This text layout used to be the most common form of typography appeared in China. From the picture book, we can see that the texts can assist readers to have a better understanding of the interpictorial designs from both literary and visual perspectives. Another kind of visual element, thumbnail images, appears in two of my selected picture books. Picture books with thumbnail images seem to have a common purpose. Instead of simply applying art to enrich the visual effects of the illustrations, those thumbnail images tend to introduce the referenced arts or artists to readers. Like the closing credits roll of a movie, the page of thumbnail images presents the cast of the picture books as the final scene to wrap up the story. As I mentioned at the beginning, I also tend to find some answers from the conversations with illustrators. Through the interviews, the participants have talked about some points which caught my interest. Interpictoriality in illustrations could serve as a decoration for visual effect, or present narrative meanings relating to the context, either explicitly or implicitly. However, two of my participants argued that sometimes illustrators may simply draw interpictorial images for their own pleasure. In other words, the appearance of interpictoriality can be very subjective to the illustrators, but less meaningful to readers. Such an approach may stem from the fact that the illustrator has placed the reference arts in the picture books not for the service of any visual or narrative requirements, but merely out of his or her personal preference. Additionally, three of my participants believe that no one can avoid representing other people's arts, because they have all been steeped in the artistic environment for many years. Sometimes, they may even illustrate interpictorial images unconsciously in their works. Of course, to those illustrators who aim to let their readers identify the interpictoriality in their works, targeting different groups of readers might be a practical strategy to create picture books. It is because children's aesthetic awareness is in the developmental process. Therefore, their interpretations to illustrations in picture books are in different levels. Besides, the book readers can be from different cultures and knowledge backgrounds. You cannot simply draw one book for all the readers. To illustrate for different groups of readers, especially for children, they suggest that illustrators should go to communicate with children, their teacher, and other educators, like those ones who work in the libraries, art galleries, and museums. My research mainly aims to contribute to picture book studies by redefining the concept of interpictoriality. Through my analysis, I seek to have a better understanding of how interpictoriality works in picture books. I would like to contribute to the visual side of picture books and associate it with the illustrating practice field. Students of illustration and those people who aspire to create picture books may find that the concept provides them some inspirations. By processing works of interpictoriality, I hope they could extend their knowledge of artworks and aesthetic of arts, and make connections between fine arts and their own works. My research also intends to provide support for teachers and other educators, such as those working in libraries, museums, and galleries. I hope my research can assist them to help children to practice identifying interpictoriality in picture books, and improve children's meaning-making and aesthetic approach to visual arts, and enhance their perceptions of visual narratives. Finally, when connecting to children's study of arts in galleries and museums, I hope it can help children to make more meaningful connections with artworks too. While the research is still ongoing at the moment, this presentation ends here. In the future, I hope I can bring you more about interpictoriality in picture book studies, and thank you for your listening.